30 years ago, my life was turned upside down by a series of events that left me lost, alone, and struggling to survive. Recently, after all this time, I received an unexpected message from my stepsister, Emily, begging for forgiveness after they finally learned the truth about what happened. It was shocking, but for the first time in decades, I had a chance to share my story and finally put some words to the pain that had haunted me for years. My mom passed away from breast cancer when I was just 12 years old, which left me alone with my dad. We were devastated by the loss, but somehow we managed to get through it together. Just a couple of years later, when I was 14, my dad met Ashley, the woman who would eventually become my stepmother. She came with 2 kids of her own, my stepbrother Mark, who was the same age as me, and my stepsister Emily, who was 2 years younger. At first, things seemed to be going well. I got along with Ashley, and Emily and I quickly formed a good sibling bond. But things were different with Mark. For some reason, he and I never clicked, and it wasn't long before we were constantly at each other's throats. My dad always urged me to go easy on him, saying Mark had been the man of his house for years, and that he was adjusting to a big change. But it wasn't as if it was any easier for me. When I turned 15, I started dating a girl from school named Lisa. As far as young love goes, we were both infatuated with each other, and things seemed great. However, I later found out that Mark had a crush on her too, and he was furious that I asked her out first. He was so mad, in fact, that he picked a fight with me over it. My dad intervened, but as usual, he sided with Mark, telling me to be more considerate of his feelings. But things took a dark turn shortly after my 16th birthday. One afternoon, my stepmom Ashley was putting away my laundry and started shouting from my room. Panicked, I ran in with my dad and Lisa, only to see Ashley holding a handful of my stepsister Emily's underwear. They had somehow ended up in my drawer, and Ashley was demanding to know why they were there. I was speechless because I had no idea how they got there. Naturally, no one believed me. Then, Mark jumped in, claiming he'd caught me staring at Emily inappropriately and even heard me say I wished I could marry her. It was all lies, but his story was enough to convince my dad and stepmom. Lisa, who was with us, slapped me across the face, called me a pervert, and broke up with me on the spot. In a fit of rage, my dad grabbed me by the arm, dragged me out of the house, and yelled that he wasn't going to let a pervert endanger his daughter. I tried to plead with him, banging on the door and shouting that it was all Mark's lies, but he had already made up his mind. He opened the door just long enough to shove me onto the ground, telling me I was no longer welcome and slamming the door in my face. I had no family to turn to. My grandparents on my dad's side told me they couldn't help a pervert after hearing my dad's version of events. My mom's parents had passed away before I was born, so I had no one else to go to. With nowhere to go, I ended up on the streets. I was only 16, and every day was a struggle to survive. I did things that I'm not proud of, things no kid should ever have to do, but it was the only way to keep myself alive. Those were some of the darkest days of my life, and it took years of therapy later on to help me cope with the trauma. After a couple of years, when I turned 18, I managed to find work at a boxing gym in another state. The owner took me under his wing, and I threw myself into learning the sport. Boxing became a way for me to channel all the anger and pain I'd been carrying since that day. I wasn't the next Mike Tyson, but I was good enough to make a living, and more importantly, it helped me start healing. One day, when I was 20, I met a young woman at a cafe near the gym. She was a lot younger than me. 15 years younger, in fact, but we just clicked. I don't believe in soulmates or destiny, but if those things are real, she was mine. After a couple of years of dating, we got married. Her dad was an electrician, and he took me on as an apprentice. I think he mostly wanted to make sure I could take care of his daughter, but he ended up becoming a father figure to me. 15 years later, my wife and I are still happily married, and we have 4 beautiful daughters together. She encouraged me to go back and get my GED, which allowed me to eventually get my master's electrician license. My wife has been my rock, my biggest supporter, and the one person who has stood by me through everything. I can't thank her enough for helping me rebuild my life and find happiness. Just this past weekend, out of the blue, I received an email from Emily, my stepsister. She had somehow found my email address and sent me a long message explaining everything that had happened. She told me that recently, Mark was drinking with some friends and bragged about how he'd set me up to take Lisa from me all those years ago. He admitted that he had planted Emily's underwear in my drawer and made up the lies about me. Lisa, who was with him at the time, overheard everything. Horrified, she contacted Emily to tell her what really happened. In her email, Emily apologized over and over, saying she was devastated by what she learned and that she felt awful for everything I'd gone through. She begged me to forgive her and wanted to know if we could meet up to make amends and reconnect. But to be honest, I don't know how I feel about it. I don't hold any hatred for Emily. She was just a kid back then, caught in the middle of something she didn't understand. But I also don't feel the need to reconnect with her or anyone else from that chapter of my life. My wife and daughters are all the family I need, and I'm not sure if I want to revisit that painful past. My wife thinks I should at least write back, even if it's just a quick, snarky response like, "Thanks for finally believing me. Only took you 30 years. She has a bit of a petty side that I love, but honestly, I'm more inclined just to delete the email and move on with my life. I have everything I need now, and I don't want to reopen old wounds. Ultimately, I wanted to share my story here because I thought maybe others could relate or draw strength from it. I came across a boxing quote that I keep on my wall, and it reminds me of how far I've come. To see a man beaten not by a better man but by himself is a tragedy. I refuse to let my past defeat me, and I'm proud of the life I've built despite everything. Emily, thank you for reaching out to share your apology. I appreciate the time and effort it took for you to reflect on what happened, especially given the complexity of emotions and memories involved. However, I feel I owe you honesty, as painful as it might be. The years of lies, betrayal, and manipulation orchestrated by Mark, and, perhaps more painfully, the abandonment I felt from Dad, have left scars that run deeper than words can express. The heartbreak I experienced came not only from the accusations and actions against me, but from the silence of those I once considered my closest family. I felt discarded, left adrift, with no voice, no chance to defend myself, and ultimately no one to turn to. While I recognize that you, Mom, and Dad have come to understand the truth and genuinely regret the hurt I endured, I cannot simply wipe away the weight of these wounds or the years lost because of them. It's difficult to forgive and even harder to forget, especially when I spent so long in solitude, bearing the weight of an unearned guilt and dealing with the mistrust of people I once trusted with my life. In the years since, I've worked tirelessly to rebuild myself, to reclaim my peace, and to craft a life of my own. Therapy has been a tremendous part of my journey, but the trauma that was inflicted has fundamentally shaped me. It taught me hard lessons about self-worth, resilience, and the power of boundaries. I no longer feel the need to seek approval from those who once doubted me or allowed themselves to be swayed by malicious narratives. I am grateful for the apology and for the clarity you've shared. But after all this time, rekindling a relationship that was built on a foundation of deceit and mistrust feels insurmountable. I have finally found a sense of closure, a peace that relies not on my past but on my future. Reopening this chapter, however well-intentioned, would only unsettle the stability I've fought so hard to achieve. Please understand that my decision is not rooted in resentment. Rather, it's a necessary step for my continued healing. I am choosing to prioritize my emotional health, and in doing so, I must move forward without revisiting the past. I hope you, Mom, and Dad can find some solace and understanding in this choice. I truly wish you all the best in life, and hope that you can respect my boundaries. I kindly ask that you share this message with everyone and honor my request to not reach out again. Sincerely. Hello, everyone. I just wanted to check in and thank everyone who has been following my story and offering support. It's been incredibly comforting to have a community rally around me during such a vulnerable time. To reassure those who were concerned about my family's response after I asked them for distance. Thankfully, they've respected my wishes. Since my final message, all has been quiet, and I think my words helped them come to terms with my decision. On a brighter note, my life has been moving in a truly beautiful direction. My wife and I recently found out that we're expecting a baby boy. This wasn't in the plan, but we are absolutely thrilled, as are our daughters. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a bit nervous, but my wife has been my rock, reassuring me every day that I'm already a wonderful dad and that everything will fall into place. Thank you again to everyone who's been a part of this journey. Your kindness and support have meant the world. Here's to a future filled with new beginnings and happiness. Take care. Hi, everyone. I'm a 19-year-old college student with a close and honest relationship with my 43-year-old mother. Growing up, she's been both mom and dad to me, always supportive and involved. So, when I found out I was pregnant a few months ago, I went straight to her, hoping for support. She was initially upset, understandably, given I'm just entering my second year of college, but eventually came around and started to show excitement for a new baby in our lives. Recently, my mom got into a new relationship, and they're planning to marry and move to another state. I'm happy for her, and I want her to find happiness, even if that means moving away. But last week, she came into my room with a proposal that shook me. She suggested that she take my baby with her to the new state, raising my child as her own so I could still enjoy my youth. At first, I thought she was joking, but her seriousness was clear. I thanked her but firmly declined, saying that this is my baby and my responsibility. My mom didn't take it well. She became angry and even tried to kick me out. Luckily, I was already in the process of packing and left. 2 weeks went by without us speaking. When I finally returned home, she approached me with the same proposition, now more determined than ever. She insisted this was for my own good and threatened to take it to court if she had to. I know she can't legally take my child, but the whole situation left me hurt and confused. My mom has always wanted more kids, but because of her pose and other health issues, she couldn't conceive naturally. Now, it feels like she's trying to replace that dream with my child. I'm currently staying with family members who support me, and I'm saving up for my own apartment. I have a solid job and enough savings to move closer to my school soon, which will help me stand on my own 2 feet. The baby's father is still in the picture and planning to move in with me once I settle down. Although I'm sad that my child may grow up without their grandmother due to this ordeal, I'm also grateful for the family who stood by me. Thanks so much for everyone's supportive messages and advice on what steps I should take. I've made sure all my medical records and information are private, and I'm staying in a safe place with family. Many have asked if my mom's boyfriend knows about her plan, and as far as I know, he doesn't. It seems like she only brought this to me, perhaps so he wouldn't get false hope. My focus now is finding a stable home close to my school and cutting contact with her once that's done. Hello all. I finally secured an apartment near my school, and I'm currently moving in. Going no contact with my mom was difficult but necessary. I managed to get all my belongings from her house about 2 weeks ago, and since then, we haven't spoken. Moving did set me back financially. I spent most of my savings on the apartment, and now have a lot of catching up to do to save for the baby and a vehicle. But I'm relieved to be in a safer, more stable situation. My mom is still with her boyfriend, though I'm not sure he knows anything about her plans. She did try to get mutual friends to convince me to let her raise my child, but they're on my side. Unfortunately, she seems to have isolated herself from the rest of the family, as everyone disagrees with her actions. Finally, I have some joyful news. I'm having a baby girl. Thank you all so much for your advice and support throughout this journey. I'm not sure if I'll update again, but I wanted to express my gratitude one last time. Thank you, and take care.